The Valtari Republic was in turmoil. The usually peaceful and agricultural nation found itself on the brink of war with the powerful Ishtal Empire. For days, the Ishtal had been amassing ships at the border, and the Valtari leaders' worst fears were confirmed that morning. The Ishtal Emperor sent an ultimatum: surrender and become vassals within a week or face a brutal invasion. In the bustling corridors of the Valtari military headquarters, tension was palpable. Officers rushed about, coordinating defenses and sending urgent messages to allies. The Valtari Republic, a proud democracy, would never bow to a tyrant. Yet their military was small and their industrial capacity limited. They knew they stood no chance alone. A call for help was sent out to every potential ally. In the grand meeting hall of the army headquarters, the most important Valtari military leaders gathered, waiting anxiously for responses. The mood was grim. The stakes were clear. Failure to secure support meant certain defeat. The doors to the meeting hall swung open, and the Minister of Foreign Affairs and Diplomacy entered. He wasted no time. "I know you are all very short on time, so I will get straight to the point. Nobody will join this war on our side." Disappointment rippled through the room. Some generals stood up, ready to leave in frustration. The Valtari Republic was largely agricultural and without significant military strength. Facing the mighty Ishtal Empire alone seemed like an impossible task. The minister continued, "However, the amount of economic sanctions against the empire and the promised humanitarian aid is far higher than we expected." "Excuse me, Minister," interrupted the head of defense. "What military help can we actually expect?" "Well, the Keystars, Esti, Humans and Otholids have all promised significant military material donations, as well as trainers to help with mobilization," the minister replied. The generals seemed slightly relieved. These were powerful allies. If they acted on their promises, the Valtari might have a fighting chance. "The Humans also offered to send an attaché," added the minister. "A what?" asked the head of defense. "An attaché. It's a kind of strategic advisor who will observe our tactics and help us improve them," explained the minister. A field marshal sighed. "Why would we want human strategic insight anyway?" The minister responded, "For starters, the Humans have never lost a war." There was a murmur of interest. The Humans' reputation for strategic brilliance was well known, and their unconventional methods could be exactly what the Valtari needed to turn the tide. The generals began to see a glimmer of hope. Desperation had driven the Valtari Republic to seek help from every corner of the galaxy. The threat from the Ishtal Empire loomed large, and without strong allies, their chances of survival were slim. Messages were dispatched to all neighboring factions, pleading for military support, economic sanctions against Ishtal, or any form of assistance. In the grand meeting hall of the Valtari military headquarters, the atmosphere was tense. High-ranking officials and military leaders anxiously awaited responses from their allies. The room was filled with murmurs of worry and frustration. The stakes were high, and every second counted. The Minister of Foreign Affairs and Diplomacy entered the hall, his face grave. "I have news," he announced, capturing everyone's attention. "I know you are all short on time, so I will get straight to the point. Nobody will join this war on our side." A wave of disappointment and anger swept through the room. Some generals stood up, ready to leave in frustration. The Valtari Republic, known for its agriculture rather than its military prowess, felt the weight of impending doom. How could they possibly stand against the might of the Ishtal Empire alone? The minister continued, "However, the amount of economic sanctions against the empire and the promised humanitarian aid is far higher than we expected." "Excuse me, Minister," interrupted the head of defense. "What military help can we actually expect?" "Well, the Keystars, Esti, Humans and Otholids have all promised significant military material donations, as well as trainers to help with mobilization," the minister replied. There was a slight shift in the room's atmosphere. These were formidable allies. Their support, even if indirect, could provide the edge the Valtari needed. "The Humans also offered to send an attaché," the minister added. "A what?" asked the head of defense. "An attaché. It's a kind of strategic advisor who will observe our tactics and help us improve them," explained the minister. A field marshal sighed. Why would we want human strategic insight anyway? The minister responded, for starters, the humans have never lost a war. There was a murmur of interest. The humans' reputation for strategic brilliance was well known, and their unconventional methods could be exactly what the Valtari needed to turn the tide. The generals began to see a glimmer of hope. The room was filled with curious and skeptical faces as the human envoy, Commander Mora, stood before the Valtari military leaders. Commander Mora was relatively small and unimpressive for someone of her importance, and the black uniform of the Special Forces didn't really suit her well. Nevertheless, her calm demeanor commanded attention. I will start with the immediate defense strategy we conceived, since it needs to be addressed as soon as possible, Mora began. A map of the Valtari Republic appeared on the giant screen behind her, labeled with various defensive priorities. The head of defense interrupted. You expect us to give up half of our territory without a fight? Commander Mora nodded. Yes. We must focus on what we can realistically defend, but more importantly, we must change the way we think about this war. Let me give you an example from our history, the war against the Deru 45 years ago. The screen switched to a historical map. The Deru were the biggest exporters of luxury products and consumer goods. The humans, emerging as competitors, faced economic warfare when the Deru declared war. Despite having a smaller, less advanced fleet, we won. The generals leaned in, intrigued. Mora continued, our strategy was not to win battles, but to win the war. We placed a blockade on the Deru, targeting their exports to force customers to switch to our products. We didn't need to invade or capture territories, we just needed to disrupt their economy. A field marshal frowned. But how did you maintain the blockade with a weaker fleet? Good question, Mora said. The Deru had a vast territory with thousands of systems. We used every ship we had, including outdated models, to enforce the blockade. Our goal was to make the blockade unbreakable by spreading our forces thinly, but effectively. We fled from every direct confrontation, she added. Our ships would warp in, disrupt trade, and then flee when the Deru arrived. We lost every battle, but we won the war because we forced the Deru to spread their superior fleet too thin, exhausting their resources. The room was silent, absorbing the strategy. Mora pointed to another part of the map. We also armed and supported pirates to further strain the Deru's resources, ensuring our blockade held. The head of defense looked impressed. And you think we can do something similar? Absolutely, Mora replied. We need to make the Ishtal believe they are winning, while we strategically retreat and disrupt their supply lines. We will force them to overextend and exhaust their resources, just like we did with the Deru. Why would we want human strategic insight anyway? A field marshal asked. Mora smiled. Because humans have never lost a war. We understand that wars are not just fought on battlefields, but on economic, political, and psychological fronts. If we adopt this comprehensive strategy, we can turn the tide in our favor. The Valtari generals exchanged glances. They saw the potential in this unconventional approach. They would need to adapt quickly, but with the humans' guidance, they had a fighting chance. The Valtari leadership was hesitant, but determined to follow the unconventional human strategy. With Commander Mora's guidance, they began the daunting task of reorganizing their defenses and preparing for a war that would be fought on multiple fronts, not just in space but in the minds and economies of their enemies. The first step was to withdraw from the less strategic systems, a move that went against every instinct of the Valtari military. These systems were mostly barren and held little value except for their strategic locations. By abandoning them, the Valtari significantly shortened their supply lines and stretched those of the Ishtal. It was a tough decision, but as Mora explained, it was crucial for their survival. We must make them believe they're steamrolling us, Mora emphasized during a strategy meeting. Let them take these empty systems. They gain nothing, and we conserve our strength. Next, the Valtari forces were instructed to engage in guerrilla tactics. They would strike quickly at Ishtal supply lines, disrupt communications, and then vanish before the superior Ishtal forces could respond. It was a frustrating method for the disciplined Valtari military, but it proved effective. The Ishtal were forced to spread their forces thin, trying to guard every possible point of attack. "We will hit them where they least expect it," said Field Marshal Rallen, one of the key leaders adapting to the new tactics. "It's not about winning battles, it's about wearing them down." Commander Mora also suggested specific targets within the Ishtal hierarchy. "We need to make their best generals look incompetent," she explained. "Focus on making their victories costly and their defeats humiliating." Human trainers arrived and began working with Valtari troops, teaching them the intricacies of hit-and-run tactics, sabotage, and psychological warfare. The Valtari soldiers were quick learners, and soon they were implementing these new strategies with remarkable efficiency. "We're not used to fighting like this," admitted Lieutenant Kira, one of the Valtari soldiers. "But I can see why it's necessary. We're making the Ishtal chase shadows." The Valtari also began modifying their ships for these new tactics. Old cargo ships were converted into makeshift warships, equipped with stealth technology and advanced sensors to avoid detection. It wasn't about firepower, it was about mobility and deception. The initial phases of the plan showed promise. The Ishtal, overconfident in their superiority, fell for the traps laid by the Valtari. Supply lines were disrupted, and morale among the Ishtal troops began to waver as they faced unexpected resistance. However, not everyone in the Valtari Republic was convinced. Some saw the withdrawals as cowardice, and there were murmurs of dissent among the populace. The government worked hard to keep morale high, emphasizing the cunning and necessity of the strategy. "The Ishtal think they're winning," President Alora said in a public address, "but every system they take weakens them and strengthens our resolve. We will not surrender. We will outlast them." As the war dragged on, internal conflicts began to surface within the Ishtal Empire. The once united front started to show cracks. The Valtari's focused attacks on the most competent Ishtal generals created distrust and frustration within their ranks. The Ishtal leadership, under pressure from continuous and costly skirmishes, began to question their strategy and leadership. General Alret of Withis, a key Ishtal leader, became increasingly vocal about the poor planning and execution of the campaign. His criticism only added to the chaos within the Ishtal command, further benefiting the Valtari's strategy. The Valtari's unconventional approach was working. The Ishtal were stretched thin, resources were dwindling, and morale was low. The stage was set for a decisive move that could turn the tide of the war completely. Valtari leaders saw an opportunity. They began planning for a secret negotiation with General Alret, hoping to exploit the internal strife within the Ishtal Empire. If they could secure an alliance with him, it might just be the key to achieving lasting peace and security for the Valtari Republic. The plan was set in motion. They were ready to take the next step, guided by the human strategy that had so far proven its worth. With the initial successes of their joint operations, the Valtari and their human allies intensified their cooperation. Commander Mora and her team of human strategists became integral to the Valtari war effort, working closely with the Valtari military to refine and execute their plans. The human strategic advisor, Commander Mora, arrived with a small contingent of experts and trainers. Their presence marked a significant turning point in the Valtari's approach to the war. Mora's team brought with them advanced technology, new tactics, and a wealth of experience in unconventional warfare. "We're not just here to advise," Mora stated in her first briefing with the Valtari High Command. "We're here to fight alongside you and ensure our strategies succeed." The first step was to develop detailed plans for the next phase of the campaign. The human and Valtari teams worked tirelessly, poring over maps, intelligence reports, and logistical data. They identified key targets within the Ishtal supply network and planned a series of coordinated strikes designed to further stretch the Ishtal forces. "Our goal is to create chaos," Mora explained. "We will hit them in unexpected places, disrupt their supply lines, and force them to overcommit their resources." Human trainers began working with Valtari troops, imparting crucial skills in guerrilla tactics, sabotage, and psychological operations. The Valtari soldiers, though initially skeptical, quickly adapted to the new methods. They learned to move swiftly and silently, to set traps and ambushes, and to exploit the terrain to their advantage. "We're learning to fight smarter, not harder," said Lieutenant Kira during a training exercise. These new tactics are turning us into a force that the Ishtal won't be able to predict or counter easily. The first joint operations between the Valtari and their human advisors were a series of night raids on Ishtal supply depots. Using stealth technology provided by the humans, the Valtari strike teams infiltrated enemy lines, destroyed critical supplies, and vanished into the night before the Ishtal forces could respond. "These raids are just the beginning," Mora told the Valtari commanders. "We will keep them off balance, make them second-guess every move, and force them to react to us." The success of these initial operations bolstered the confidence of the Valtari forces. They saw firsthand the effectiveness of the human strategies and began to fully embrace the unconventional tactics. The cooperation between the humans and the Valtari also strengthened their bond. Mutual respect grew as they fought side by side, sharing the burdens and triumphs of war. The Valtari began to see the humans not just as advisors, but as true allies committed to their cause. "We couldn't ask for better partners," President Alora said in a speech to her people. "With their help, we are not just defending our homes, we are rewriting the rules of warfare." The combined efforts of the Valtari and their human allies created a formidable force. The Ishtal Empire, once confident of an easy victory, now faced an adversary that was both unpredictable and relentless. The stage was set for the next phase of their campaign, and the Valtari were ready to take the fight to the Ishtal on their terms. With the initial successes of their joint operations, the Valtari and their human allies intensified their efforts, leading to an escalation of the conflict. The Ishtal Empire, initially overconfident, began to feel the strain of the Valtari's relentless and unconventional tactics. The Valtari's use of guerrilla tactics and strategic withdrawals continued to pay off. Supply lines were disrupted, communications were severed, and morale among Ishtal troops began to waver. The Valtari and human forces struck hard and fast, disappearing before the Ishtal could mount a counterattack. "Our hit-and-run tactics are wearing them down," Field Marshal Raylan reported. "Every skirmish costs them more than it costs us." Recognizing the effectiveness of the Valtari strategy, the Ishtal Empire adapted by increasing their patrols and attempting to fortify their supply routes. However, the vastness of their territory and the ingenuity of the Valtari tactics made it difficult for them to secure every point of vulnerability. "The Ishtal are spreading themselves thin," Mora observed. "They're trying to be everywhere at once, and it's draining their resources." The conflict reached several critical points where the Valtari's resolve was tested. One such moment came when the Ishtal launched a full-scale assault on a key Valtari system, hoping to deliver a decisive blow. The Valtari, forewarned by human intelligence, had set a trap. As the Ishtal fleet entered the system, they found it seemingly abandoned. Suddenly, Valtari ships, equipped with advanced human stealth technology, appeared from hiding and launched a surprise attack. The Ishtal fleet, caught off guard, suffered heavy losses. "We showed them that we won't back down," said Lieutenant Kira, who participated in the ambush. "We're fighting for our homes, and we'll make them pay for every inch they try to take." The escalating conflict also led to growing tensions within the Valtari Republic. While many supported the unconventional tactics, others were anxious about the continued sacrifices and the uncertainty of the outcome. The government worked hard to maintain unity and morale. "We must stay strong and united," President Alora urged in a public address. "Our strategy is working, and with our allies' help, we can withstand this storm." The Valtari and human forces also ramped up their psychological warfare efforts. Propaganda broadcasts targeted Ishtal troops, spreading rumors of Valtari victories and highlighting the futility of the Ishtal's campaign. Leaflets were dropped behind enemy lines, sowing doubt and dissent. "War isn't just about weapons," Mora explained to the Valtari commanders. "It's about breaking the enemy's will to fight. We need to make the Ishtal soldiers question why they're here and whether it's worth it." The relentless pressure began to take its toll. Reports of desertions and low morale within the Ishtal ranks increased. The Valtari's unconventional strategy, combined with their human allies' expertise, was proving to be a formidable challenge for the Ishtal Empire. As the conflict escalated, the Valtari and their allies remained focused on their goal: to outlast and outmaneuver their powerful adversary. The stage was set for the next decisive moves in their campaign. As the Valtari and their human allies pressed on with their relentless and unconventional tactics, the Ishtal Empire began to show signs of internal strife. The prolonged conflict and the unexpected resilience of the Valtari forces took a heavy toll on the Ishtal leadership and their military. The Ishtal Empire's leadership was once a unified force, confident in their superiority. However, the continuous setbacks and the strategic brilliance of the Valtari began to sow seeds of doubt and discord. High-ranking officials and generals started questioning the decisions made by their superiors. General Alret of Withis, one of Ishtal's most respected military minds, became increasingly vocal about the poor planning and execution of the campaign. "Our strategies are flawed," he argued in a heated council meeting. "We are underestimating our enemy and overextending our forces." The Valtari's focused attacks on the most competent Ishtal generals like Alret created an atmosphere of distrust and frustration within the Ishtal ranks. These skilled leaders, once seen as untouchable, were now facing humiliation and loss of favor. The Ishtal Emperor, desperate to maintain control, began to distrust even his most loyal advisors. "Every defeat is a stain on our honor," the Emperor declared. "We must find the traitors within our ranks who are failing us." The constant pressure from the Valtari's guerrilla tactics and the psychological warfare campaigns led to exhaustion and low morale among the Ishtal troops. Desertions became more frequent, and whispers of discontent spread through the ranks. Soldiers questioned the purpose of the war and the competence of their leaders. "The men are tired," reported one Ishtal commander. "They feel like they're fighting a ghost, never getting a clear victory. It's demoralizing." The Valtari capitalized on this internal strife, using it to their advantage. They launched targeted propaganda campaigns, further deepening the divisions within the Ishtal leadership and military. Every move was calculated to exploit the growing fractures in their enemy's unity. "Our greatest weapon is their doubt," Mora explained to the Valtari High Command. "We must keep them questioning every decision and every action." The internal strife within the Ishtal Empire created an environment of chaos and mistrust, weakening their ability to effectively counter the Valtari's strategies. This division would soon set the stage for a decisive shift in the war. As the Ishtal Empire struggled with internal strife and diminishing morale, the Valtari leadership saw an opportunity to further tilt the balance in their favor. They decided to take a bold step: initiate secret negotiations with General Alret of Withis, a highly respected but increasingly disillusioned leader within the Ishtal military. The Valtari dispatched a covert diplomatic mission to contact General Alret. The mission was fraught with danger, but the potential rewards were immense. The Valtari envoy, Minister of Foreign Affairs Thalor, managed to arrange a clandestine meeting with Alret on a neutral, uninhabited moon. "We need to end this war," Thalor began, "but we need your help. You are the key to peace and a new beginning for both our peoples." Alret, weary from the ongoing conflict and the infighting within his ranks, listened intently. "What do you propose?" he asked, his eyes narrowing with interest. Thalor laid out the Valtari's proposal. "We offer our support in helping you secure control of the Ishtal throne. In exchange, you agree to a peace treaty and recognize our territorial sovereignty. Additionally, we can negotiate favorable trade agreements to ensure the prosperity of both our nations." Alret considered the offer. He knew the Ishtal Empire was on the brink of collapse, and the current leadership was incapable of salvaging the situation. A change was necessary, and this alliance could provide the stability and resources needed to rebuild. "I accept your terms," Alret finally said. "But know this, I will not betray my people. This must be for the greater good of the Ishtal Empire." With the alliance secured, the Valtari began subtly supporting Alret's rise to power. They provided intelligence, resources, and strategic advice to help him navigate the treacherous political landscape of the Ishtal Empire. Meanwhile, Valtari and human forces intensified their psychological warfare, targeting the remaining loyalists and sowing further discord. Alret orchestrated a coup using his newfound support to outmaneuver his rivals. The emperor, already weakened and unpopular, was deposed. Alret assumed control, positioning himself as a savior who could restore order and prosperity. Once in power, Alret wasted no time in negotiating a peace treaty with the Valtari. The treaty was announced with great fanfare, marking the end of hostilities and the beginning of a new era. The terms were clear. The Ishtal Empire would respect Valtari sovereignty, and both nations would engage in mutually beneficial trade. In a public address, President Allura praised the new alliance. "Today marks the dawn of a new chapter for our people. Together we will build a future of peace and prosperity." The Valtari and Ishtal began the arduous task of rebuilding trust. Joint ventures in agriculture and technology were established, fostering cooperation and healing the wounds of war. The human advisors continued to play a crucial role, guiding both nations towards stability and growth. "Peace is not the absence of conflict," Mora remarked during a joint military exercise. "It's the presence of justice and the willingness to work together for a better future." The turning point had been reached. The alliance with General Alret not only ended the war, but also paved the way for a lasting peace, demonstrating the power of strategic alliances and the importance of adaptability in the face of adversity. The signing of the peace treaty between the Valtari Republic and the Ishtal Empire marked the beginning of a new era. The war had been long and grueling, but the unconventional strategies and strategic alliances had paid off. Both nations now faced the monumental task of rebuilding and fostering a lasting peace. General Alret's rise to power brought stability to the Ishtal Empire. With the support of the Valtari and their human allies, Alret began implementing reforms to strengthen the economy and improve the lives of his people. The once divided Ishtal military was reorganized, and morale began to recover. President Allura, in a televised address, expressed hope and optimism for the future. "This peace is not just an end to war, but the beginning of a partnership that will benefit both our nations. We have shown that through cooperation and understanding, we can overcome any challenge." The Valtari and Ishtal immediately began working on trade agreements that would benefit both economies. The Valtari, with their rich agricultural resources, provided much-needed food supplies to the Ishtal, while the Ishtal shared their advanced technologies. This exchange not only boosted the economies, but also helped in mending the rift between the two peoples. Joint reconstruction projects were launched in war-torn areas, symbolizing the new cooperation between former enemies. Schools, hospitals, and infrastructure projects were prioritized, with human advisors playing a key role in ensuring efficient implementation. The role of the human advisors was pivotal throughout the conflict and into the peace. Their strategies had not only helped win the war, but also laid the groundwork for a stable peace. Commander Mora and her team continued to assist both nations, ensuring that the lessons learned during the war translated into effective governance and cooperation. "Humanity's greatest strength is our ability to adapt and learn," Mora said at a peace conference. "We have helped forge a path to peace here, and we will continue to support you as you build a brighter future." The cooperation between the Valtari, Ishtal, and humans had forged a new path forward. The alliance ensured that peace and prosperity would be the focus of this new era. The Valtari Republic, once on the brink of annihilation, now stood as a testament to the power of resilience, strategic thinking, and the importance of alliances. As the Valtari and Ishtal peoples began to rebuild their lives, there was a renewed sense of hope. The future, once uncertain and fraught with danger, now seemed full of promise. Together they had turned the tide of war into a wave of peace, setting the stage for a prosperous and united future.